Welcome to the podcast. Today I have my good friend. She is the chief protocol economist at Huddle One. How do you actually pronounce it? Is it Huddle 01? I should have asked right before we got on here, but here we are, and we're talking to the chief protocol. Tell us how to pronounce the company name and tell us, what does a chief protocol economist do?
Well, I think you can choose your way to pronounce it, Huddle 01, Huddle 01. I typically go with 01, just because it's very much so, it's shorter, and you can even call it Huddle binary, whatever you want. As a chief protocol economist, I design all of the coordination mechanisms as well as the incentivization mechanisms for all of the players within our network, within the Huddle 01 network. Huddle 01 is a decentralized real-time communication system, and so we've got a ton of stakeholders, both from the providers of bandwidth as well as the consumers of bandwidth. So all of these different people and agents that are within the system need to come together in order to maximize a central goal, which is what I work on.
So you talked about bandwidth. So for people that are completely unfamiliar, are we talking about, mobile networks? Are we talking about like people, streaming Netflix from, some far-flung place region in the world? Like, talk to us a little bit about like what Huddle One or Huddle One is doing specifically.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like, we are a communication network, but we're focusing exclusively on communications that are happening over cyberspace. So anything that happens over the internet, essentially, and specifically the ones that require low latency. So anything that has to do with live streaming, anything that has to do with audio video communications, like video conferencing, like exactly what we're doing right now. Those are the sample of the set of all of the communications that we focus on. So anything involving data transfer in and out, data ingress or egress, that happens on the internet.
Yeah, and talk to us a little bit about like, one, why decentralization, and then like why do we need these like, coordination mechanisms, the economics in order to incentivize actors to help, bolster the network?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because one of the key things is that currently most of the platforms and most of the internet that we actually interact with on a daily basis does come from centralized servers. So whether it be a website, where a website is basically a bunch of files that are being served up by a server, a centralized server, or it can be data that's passing through these centralized servers. So for example, when you're in a video call with someone, when you're in a video conference with someone, then your data packets are going all the way to a centralized server, which is then routing them to another person's computer. So these are all happening over very centralized systems. And currently, most of these centralized servers are owned by very few companies that have unilateral price control over how much they can charge for that data transfer in and out. And boy, do they take advantage of that. Like, they do charge very high premiums on data transfer out. Data egress costs today are extremely high, particularly when you look at some of the top providers like AWS, GCP, Azure, and so on. So if you take the example of Zoom, for example, they typically use AWS as their main cloud provider, and their AWS's surcharge or premium on providing Zoom its services, it's basically like 70% to 90% all the way. Like, I don't know exactly what the terms are with AWS, within that partnership, but typically when it comes to spinning up AWS servers and using data egress on AWS servers, the premiums are just exceedingly large. And yeah, surely, like, since Zoom is a fairly large organization, they could have been offered a discount, but even with the discount, it's not going to be anything short of like 70%.
And why, for people that are confused, much like myself, is why is it so expensive? So, like, if I'm a big actor like a Zoom, in theory, I could go to GCP, I could, could strike some kind of deal with Azure. Presumably, AWS is giving them the best deal possible. At least that would be my economic guess. But that seems not to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, surely, like, this is It's not a technical challenge. The real challenge is just the economic situation, which is that there are very few players that have accumulated trust that even offer these services, and there's only about five of them that are the bigger players, and they dominate the market. And so within them, it's basically duopoly of service. So they're able to charge an extensive margin on all of these, on especially on data egress, and so that's why there's this price control.
Got it. Got it. So let's imagine we're taking the Zoom example, and let's say Zoom it comes to Huddle 01, and they're like, "Hey, we would love to build on your infrastructure." We always used to like to do this exercise at BlackRock called the like life of a transaction. So maybe it could be like the life of a video call from Zoom's perspective, and how that might differ from using AWS versus Huddle.
Yeah. Right now, when you are having a call on AWS with on Zoom, um, Zoom would essentially hire AWS servers in order to route all of its users' data packets back and forth. Um, if you were to use Huddle 01, then instead of like plugging into an AWS server, all you would need to do is switch your URL in order to plug into Huddle 01 network, which is basically a set of many nodes all across the world that are geographically distributed all across the world to offer the lowest latency wherever you are. And those and as Zoom, all you would need to do is accept way better pricing and much better latency for your customers, and also more security as well as and you also have the option of having better privacy terms as a video conferencing provider if you choose to. And then your data packets, instead of going to AWS centralized servers that are usually located in either US East or like a few other locations around the world, your data packets would be transmitted to the node that's nearest to you in your geographical location, which will then offer better latency. And then this node will then talk to whoever else you're talking to. I think you mentioned you're in Medellin, which is in Colombia, like across the Atlantic. Then my data packets from here in continental Europe would go all the way to South America, near a node that is maybe in Peru or wherever else is closer to you, and then you will get access to those. So we have a structure which implements cascading. So basically, instead of this one node that is near me sending those packets to you, which will take a very long time, by the way, instead of that, we rely more on server to server communication rather than client to server or client to client communication. That way, we're able to offer the best latency to whoever is actually being able to
Very cool.
talk.
And then let's talk a little bit about nodes, because obviously nodes are very important to what would you guys consider yourself a DePIN network?
Yeah, we're a decentralized physical infrastructure network. Um, it's actually it's actually like kind of interesting how the landscape within DeepIn has transformed. Previously, it was very much reliant on hardware nodes themselves, but what we have found is that after that era of hardware nodes, where you literally have like a physical node that attaches to your car or that you place at home, we've noticed that more and more folks are starting to want to use their existing machinery and whatever they have available to them directly in order to run nodes. So what we do with Huddle 01 nodes is that all you need to do is have access to 1 Gbps internet connection, which most of us do, and a 4-core CPU compute, which is accessible in most laptops. So yeah, it's a DePIN network in the sense that you're basically using your connection and your physical device in order to supply bandwidth.
And so if somebody wants to get started as like say a node provider, they need to like purchase a node. Do they just like download some software and they're like, perfect, now I'm a node provider? Like how does it work from that perspective, from a node provider perspective?
Yeah, like our node providers, or what we call our media nodes, are one of the most crucial fundamental elements of our network because they're literally powering the network. And so from an economics perspective, they are essentially like the supply side. So instead of AWS service, we have our Huddle One media nodes. And these media nodes, you can basically run it from anywhere. You can use your laptop. All you need to do is basically have access to a node key. And node keys you can avail either through our node mint programs, which is typically bought for around the price of 340. Right now, we are also doing a node mint where you're able to purchase a node key for about that price. And then all you would need to do is either run it on your own machine, or you can even delegate it to a third party. And so when you delegate it to a third party, you might give like a 2% commission or something on your rewards, but earn all of the rest of the rewards yourself. And then, of course, there are technical requirements as well. The technical requirements being 1 Gbps of bandwidth as well as 4-core compute. And so besides that, all you would need to do is basically maintain good uptime and also ensure that all of your technical requirements are always met, and then you're good to go. And of course, you earn rewards for serving the network.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about that. I know we touched on it a bit earlier, but let's talk about designing kind of crypto economies and crypto economic incentives so that people, because at the end of the day, people want to get a return on the compute they're providing or the services they're providing. Talk to us a little bit about how you design these kinds of incentivization structures and make them very fair and balanced so that people want to contribute to the network.
Yeah, this is a very important challenge because it forms the core of the core sustainability aspect of the system in the long term as well. Because we certainly need our node providers to show up every day and be sufficiently incentivized such that they are able to serve, such that they want to serve. Um, they want to serve bandwidth as well as compute for an extended period of time and also continue doing so for as long as there is demand. And in order to do that, we typically employ various different mechanisms at various different processes at various different stages of the economic design process. Now, whenever you think of economic systems or designing economic systems, most of the problems that you face in crypto economics tend to take the form of systems design problems and coordination problems. And coordination problems are typically when you're thinking about designing coordination for multi-agent systems, right? Or multi-population systems as well. So you've got two populations in our network. You've got the population of suppliers, which is essentially the media nodes who are supplying bandwidth, and then you've got also the consumers who are essentially consuming bandwidth. And in this type of multi-population system, you basically need to design the incentives for the media nodes such that they continually provide and also that it's fair. And so mainly the factors that we look in for this one are things such as geographical location. Latency is actually the most important because that basically gives you an idea of their geolocation as well as the quality of service that they're providing. Latency, quality of service, geographical proximity, both to demand as well as to supply. So if you're closer to demand regions like big cities and so on, then you get incentivized more. And similarly, if you're further away from rest of suppliers, so if you're in a remote region where there's a lot of demand, then also you'll get incentivized more. And mainly also one other thing that's really important and also fairly dynamic is uptime. So how reliable is your node? That's something that we also measure and take into consideration while designing these media node rewards. So media node rewards are designed in such a way that we can continually reward these media nodes while at the same time ensuring that we're generating the revenue from our consumers, and this revenue is sufficient in order to reward these media nodes. So that way we are able to keep the system independent and keep the system self-sustainable for a long time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sustainability is so important. So talk to us a little bit about like actual adoption of the network itself. So there's the supply side. Talk about the demand side. What kind of customers? Of course, anything you can divulge. Don't get yourself in trouble here, of course.
Yeah. We've had really good traction so far, especially recently because we launched our Huddleverse, which is essentially our testnet program, in where you can basically earn tons of points in order to participate in meetings as well as onboard various things. So far to date, we've completed on the network about 250 million minutes of meeting minutes of people participating in various meetings on the Huddle One network. We've also completed I think we've onboarded 2.3K nodes as well that are currently online on our network. They're actively participating in providing bandwidth and compute to the Huddle One network as well. So you've got both the supply side, which is serving our demand, and the demand side. That one actually needs to take off first. And so right now, with the demand side, we're at about 250 million minutes completed, and soon we will also be onboarding more nodes, because right now we're doing our node mint. So those nodes will also come live, and those will add to our supply side, be able to support even more demand.
Absolutely. Very, very exciting times for you guys. So talk to us a little bit about where you see the company in the next like 2, 3 years.
In the next 2, 3 years, well, soon we're going to be doing our. So right now, actually, we're doing our incentivized testnet. So through the incentivized testnet, you're able to either participate as a media node or as a end user. As a media node, you can supply your bandwidth and rewards. On the incentivized testnet, we have lower requirements for you to enter, participate, and earn, so that we can onboard as many media nodes as possible. And we have a very simple reward function for it as well, which is basically, as long as you've got minimum bandwidth, and also you have good uptime, you're able to earn about 5 T huddle per day. And then you're also able to participate in our incentivized testnet through the Huddleverse as well. Through the Huddleverse, you can complete various tasks and also earn HP points. And so both of these, whether you earn T Huddle or HP points, come TGE, which is the token generation event, you're able to convert both of them into into Huddle tokens, which then are tradable in the open market. So we've got TGE on the horizon, and following TGE, we are going to be really ramping up demand. So we're going to be closing a lot of enterprise customers as well, particularly the likes of who are involved in video conferencing, but also another key expansion area for us is also live CDNs. So we specialize in any sort of data transfer that involves that has a requirement for being live. So anything requiring low latency is something that we specialize in, right? And one of the key areas that we already are deploying products in is on video conferencing. But another area that we also want to expand to is also streaming, so live streaming and so on. And so live CDNs is another area that we'll be looking to expand into. And probably also doing that through the testnet phase, so that we're able to test some of these as well. And following that, we're taking a very much so demand first approach, so that we can grow the demand sufficiently large, so that we can generate revenue that will then be routed to reward our nodes.
Very exciting. Very exciting. So finally, where can people learn a little bit more about you, connect with you online, and also learn more about the company?
You guys can find everything about Huddle One at huddle01.com. And we also have a Twitter, which, hey, Jax, can we actually link the Twitter in
Yeah,
the
yeah. We'll
bio?
put it in the description.
Our Twitter as well as our website on the bio. And more about me, you can look me up online, and you'll find like a bunch of other work from me, as well as videos if you feel to watch.
Absolutely. Well, I'll have all the links down in the description. Everyone go get involved with Huddle One. And it seems like they got some exciting things on the horizon. Until the next episode, let's continue building the future of on-chain AI.